Good afternoon. My name is Arran. I'm the principal here at Vert Law, and I've been asked by a few people to do a blog or a video blog about Bitcoin and blockchain, just explaining what these things are, how they work. There's been to be a lot of media coverage on blockchain recently, and of course Bitcoin with the massive price fluctuations. And the media themselves seem to not be quite sure about blockchain because a lot of the articles just don't make sense once you have an understanding of how it works. So it's about 10 or so minutes, I think. I'm not going to cover everything to do with blockchain and Bitcoin because that would take hours. But it will give you hopefully an idea as to at least the fundamentals and the basics of how these things come together. And also where they're going in the future. So what is this big blockchain thing people seem to think is going to be the next great invention? So the first thing, of course, is the disclaimer. This is not legal advice. This is not financial advice. And if you want legal advice, give me a call or an email or go to the website, virt.nz. If you want financial advice, then go see a financial advisor or someone along those lines. First thing you should know about any cryptocurrency system is that everybody who's on there has a unique identifying code. In Bitcoin, it is a 64-character code, which basically has no real meaning other than it's a random collection of numbers and letters. You'll actually see them in a screenshot later on, so I'll point them out. And that's how you are known on there. Now, no one knows whose code belongs to who, unless it's publicly known information. So if you are a company that is transferring Bitcoin into US dollars, then they need to know what your code is. So that's publicly known information. So you'll see that later on as well in one of the screenshots. But most users will keep it anonymous, which creates a lot of problems for tax purposes. Now, Bitcoins, we'll start with how they're created. Now, Bitcoins are created by what we call miners. So these are people who run a computer, and the computer is sitting there constantly trying to work out this mathematical problem. And often these people will have warehouses full of computers, based often in Iceland where power is cheap, China where power is subsidized, and they sit there working on this problem. And all of them working on the same problem at the same time. The first one to solve the problem wins 12.5 Bitcoins. That's how they get created. And at the same time, a block gets created, but we'll come to that in a sec. Once it's solved, everyone moves on to the next problem, and it's just created by the system itself. This is the problem to solve. Solving the problem doesn't actually create anything else other than the Bitcoins. There is no, it's not computing anything beneficial to humanity. It's just a problem that's being solved, not a problem that's actually has any real value. Now, with the computer who figures out the solution, they get the 12.5 Bitcoins. Quite often you'll have a lot of users together, sometimes thousands and tens of thousands of users, as part of a large consortium or working on the problem. And then if one of them wins it, then they all get a share of that, of those Bitcoins, depending on how much work they've put into trying to solve it. But it's kind of a problem where it isn't so much I help towards 10% of the problem, it is you solve it or you don't solve it. So this way they get something out of it. So when a problem is solved, the system creates what is called a block. Now, a block is just a file. It's 1 megabyte in size, which is relatively small with our multi-gigabyte and terabyte systems. And it contains transaction information. So if user A wanted to send user B a Bitcoin, they'd have to put in a transaction. It would be an unverified transaction until the block creator says, yep, I will look at that transaction in my block, goes into the block, gets recorded, and then is a verified transaction, and it should go through. Now, many of you understand the idea of a ledger. It's a list of transactions they're showing what's come in and what's gone out, and typically you'd see a bank statement as being probably the most typical ledger sort of thing that you'd see. Now, effectively, Bitcoin is similar to that, but it is a massive public ledger. So all transactions between any parties on Bitcoin is recorded in there and publicly available. So A wants to send something to B, everybody knows about it. But as I said before, they probably don't know who A and B are. They could just anonymous, random collection of characters and numbers. When a block was created, there's a previous block that was created, and the block creator, the person who solved the problem, their system will automatically create the block, but it will also look at the previous block. It will take the previous block, which of course is public information, the 1 megabyte file. It will run some software on it. and that will create a unique code which relates to that block. Now from that unique code is then put inside the new block. And what this does is that it secures the new block to the old one. So if anyone tried to alter the old block, that code that was created from it would be different than the one stored in the new block. So the new block, let's call it block 23 for a random number. Block 23 contains this bit of code which identifies block 22. Block 22 contains a code for block 21, and so on and so forth going back. If anyone tries to alter any of those blocks, then it breaks that link between all those blocks, and it won't work. And because these blocks are public and they are stored on multiple systems, we're talking thousands of systems, if not more, across the globe, it's not really feasible to someone to go and try and alter all these blocks and then alter the codes, and you need to alter the entire record, and there's gigabytes of data stored going back to the very beginning. Now with the security from block to block to block, what you get is a chain of records. See, the chain of all these things put together, and it's a chain of blocks, or a blockchain. That's what the blockchain is. It is this latest block which linked to the previous one, to the previous one, to the previous one, and that's the blockchain. As the ledger, or the blockchain, is public, every transaction is publicly known, and we can actually watch them live popping up. Now I've got a little screenshot here of a website called blockchain.info, and on there we can actually see a live feed of any of the unverified transactions going through. Now the important thing to see is that it says at the top there, transactions per second, 10.46. Now that's important, we'll come to that in a moment. But actually watching this live, you'll see the transaction popping up at quite a fast frequency. And they range from tiny amounts, fractions of a Bitcoin. Other times you'll see hundreds of Bitcoins going through in one transaction, which of course is getting some big money. The second thing we can see is that we can see who holds how many Bitcoins, because it's all publicly available. So the second screenshot we got here from bitinfocharts.com is the current largest Bitcoin wallets. Now, if someone's account where they store Bitcoins is called their wallet, so it's a wallet in your pocket carrying cash, this is a wallet which is storing Bitcoins. The largest there you'll see is 167,000 Bitcoins in it, and yes, that is just shy of $1.8 trillion US in that Bitcoin wallet. We can't tell who that belongs to. You probably try and find a way of working it out, but we just don't know. The second one, as you can see, it is labelled as to who the account belongs to, and that is one of the larger Bitcoin companies that does transfers, it does transferring to US dollars, that sort of thing, and probably also stores Bitcoins on behalf of its users. Rather than having their own wallet, they can have their Bitcoin stored generally sort of in a bank, effectively. This is all great, but of course there are some issues. First thing is that the problem that these miners are working on, that's generally solved about every 10 minutes. They solve a problem, and that then creates a new block every 10 minutes. Now, because the block is only 1 megabyte in size, which is, as I said, it's quite small, it has a limit on how many transactions it can hold in there, because the transaction requires a little bit of space to put in, who's it from, who's it for, the amount being transferred. So you can get about 2,200 transactions in each block. So that's 2,200 transactions per 10-minute period, or under 4 transactions a second. Now, in New Zealand alone, Paymark, one of our bigger FPOS providers, saw a peak of 178 transactions per second in the Christmas 27 shopping period. So Bitcoin is really constrained in handling a large number of payments. It's not something that you can really do, and because you've got that time delay, wait till the next block is done and hopefully it picks you up. It's not something that you can do a transfer and then be like, great, it's gone through, you've received it. They might not receive it for a period of time. Second problem you've got is that transactions aren't handled in a queue. So if you go to a store, you'll stand in a queue, someone's in front of you, finishes, you're next in line, they handle your transaction. Here it's done on the fee you pay. So when the miner solves a problem and it creates the block, they will pick out the 2,200 highest paying transactions. So these are ones where people are paying them a transaction fee. So as well as the Bitcoins, they get extra $20,000, $30,000, depending on the time, in funds to handle those transactions. Now, the current fee is about $350 US per transaction if you want it done in the next block. That's what you're currently paying. But these figures do fluctuate. If you're willing to wait 3 or 4 blocks, or maybe wait an hour, you could probably pay just under $1 US for your transaction to go through. Now, that's fine if you were transferring, a couple of bitcoins. If you're transferring, as I did a few months ago, $10 US by Bitcoin, that means the transaction fee that we were paying on that was probably a few cents, maybe 20, 30 cents. That then took a couple of weeks before it was actually picked up and put into a block. So we were waiting for that confirmation that the transaction had gone through. Now, with the fluctuations, they can get quite high. And during the late December period, end of last year, when Bitcoin was going a bit crazy, there was a $54 per average fee being paid to be included in a block. So that person was getting 2,200 transactions at about that much each, which is about $100,000 being added onto those 12.5 Bitcoins. Second issue, or third issue, is that Bitcoins really have no point. Their only value is in the value they can be sold for. It doesn't link to anything else. There is no share of a company. There is no dividends to be paid. The price is volatile. You can't even store anything or do anything else with Bitcoin other than create more Bitcoins and transfer them around. But this is where other cryptocurrencies are starting to differ. They work on the same principle as Bitcoin with the block and the blockchain, but they can provide more than just their own value. Now, the block itself is often larger. Rather than the 1 megabyte you get a larger block, means you store more things in there, more transactions, more other files. They're created more often, and they can store more different information types. Now, a great example to explain how blockchain could be used is that you could record it for property transfers. So if A owned a property, and property was recorded in their wallet as them being the owners, they want to transfer it to B, then you could put it through a blockchain system that would then record the transaction of A transferring property to B. And then going into the future, you also have this record of who owned the property, when they owned it, when it was transferred, and it would open up this information to everybody, as well as creating a safe and fairly secure way of storing it. And then you could even add more to this, what they call smart contracts. So the block could contain some code, and in the code there would be triggers, so things that would take place if a certain event occurred. So an example with the property was that the transfer would take place once B paid A certain amount of money. So once B paid A, automatically property from A to B, no requirement for human intervention. Also used for other things, such as items being shipped when payment is received, insurance being paid when a flight is cancelled if you had travel insurance, or winnings being paid on a bet if you were betting on a team. As long as it's a definable event, which has a sort of a yes or no scenario, has it taken place, hasn't taken place, then you could really include it into a smart contract. And that smart contract's at the very basics, probably a lot more you can do with it, but that's just a basic understanding. Now, this is what many of the new cryptocurrencies say they're going to offer, often based around a certain industry rather than an overall to everybody. Some might do this, and I hope some do. There's some great possibilities there. Most will probably fail to do it or to pick up any traction. And at least one so far, if not more, are just scams to get people to invest. They're trying to sell you a currency which is going to go nowhere. You pay, they get money, and off they go with your money. So, as I said, get advice before you get involved in these things. If you need any legal advice, give me a call or an email. If you have any questions, then please let me know. Any other options for me to do videos about or blogs about. And if this has helped you out, please share it with your friends and colleagues. I like people to know actually what blockchain is, what Bitcoin is, and understand it more than we seem to be getting through the media. So, other than that, have a great day.